I'll give you the Ferrari if you can get it to run. That's what the rich guy said while he was laughing at me in front of everybody, phones out, cameras up like I was street entertainment and not a human being. And yeah, that really happened. My name is Walter Johnson. I'm 72 years old, my hands are scarred and a little shaky from a lifetime of work, and that day I was only there to pick up my granddaughter Rebecca from her job at a luxury dealership. I wasn't there to impress anybody. I wasn't asking for attention. I just happened to stall my old pickup right there in front of the entrance, and to a man like Jonathan Blackwell, local real estate celebrity, loud watch, loud voice, louder ego, that looked like an invitation to put on a show. He points across the lot at this red Ferrari, or what used to be a Ferrari, more like a carcass sitting in the corner, hood bent frame twisted, wiring burned, whole thing looking like it crawled out of a fire, and he goes, "5 expert mechanics already told me this thing is done forever, completely dead, total loss, so here's a little challenge for our guest. If you can bring it back to life, I'll sign it over to you today." And everybody laughs like it's the funniest thing they ever heard, like I'm just some old black man who doesn't know where he is. People started filming saying stuff like, "Yo, this is gonna go viral," calling me grandpa, offering me a job at a bike shop when I fail, and I could feel it, that quiet kind of disrespect where they're smiling, but they're also saying, "You don't belong here. You don't touch these cars. You don't stand on this pavement. You just broke down in the wrong zip code." You know what I mean. I didn't yell. I didn't tell him to shut his mouth. I didn't try to defend myself, because I learned a long time ago that the second you start shouting, they turn you into the angry old guy, and then you're the problem. So instead, I told him real calm, "Can I take a closer look?" And he grinned, waved his arm like he was hosting a game show. "Go ahead, just don't cut yourself on the metal." So I walked over to that Ferrari, and I laid my hand on the hood for a second, just to feel it. And something hit me that I hadn't felt in years, like muscle memory waking up, like hearing an old song and remembering exactly where you were the first time it played. While the crowd was laughing, I was already inside the car's story, because every engine tells a story if you listen right. See what nobody there knew, not Jonathan, not the sales kid clowning me, not the customers recording for Instagram, is that I wasn't just some random guy who drove an old pickup, and I spent 45 years of my life building engines, not fixing them, building them in Maranello, Italy, in the Ferrari racing division, designing high-performance engines from block to brain, signing off on systems other people swore were impossible, training the engineers who now get called genius in magazines. And I did that work quietly for decades without people clapping for me, because back then your work spoke louder than your mouth. So I'm leaning over this wreck, and I'm tracing the damage, and real fast, I see something that doesn't add up. The wiring harness is burned in a way that doesn't match heat failure from a crash. It's too clean, too even, something that looks like it was cut first, then burned after, almost like somebody tried to make it look like normal overheating. And on the fuel system, there are stress marks that don't come from impact. They come from someone forcing a component past safe limit on purpose and right. Then I knew this wasn't an accident. This wasn't, "Oh no, my beautiful car crashed. What a tragedy." This was sabotage for insurance money. I asked one of the sales guys for a Phillips number 2 with an insulated handle, and he laughed like, "We don't really do loaner tools, sir." And I said without looking up, "Third drawer of the red workbench in the service bay next to the Torx keys you left out of order." And his face changed because I was right, and he brought it back without another joke. And now the people watching weren't laughing as loud anymore. They were paying attention. Jonathan kept playing it like a comedy special for his followers, talking about how persistence is admirable, and look at this gentleman giving it his best shot. And then I finally looked up and asked him something that caught him off guard. I said, "Have you ever built anything with your own hands, something that only existed in your head, and you made it real." And he tried to answer like a businessman. "I built a real estate empire." And I shook my head and told him, "That's not building, that's buying." And the air shifted just a little. About 40 minutes into this, Rebecca finally comes back from lunch. And when she sees me surrounded by people with their phones up, her face just drains because she knows exactly who I am and exactly who Jonathan is. She knows what happens when men like him pick a target. And I could see her wanting to step in, wanting to defend me, but also scared of losing her job, so she just stood there watching, trusting me to handle it. And that right there hurt worse than all the laughing, because she shouldn't have to worry like that. I pulled one specifics plate off the engine, and I wiped the grime off with my thumb. And that's when the story changed. That was the twist. Because stamped into that metal was a serial signature, and not just any signature. Mine, my initials, Walter Johnson, and the build date, March 2019. And I kind of smiled, not to show off, just because life is funny like that. This wasn't just some random V12. This was one of mine I had personally designed. This exact engine tuned its safety thresholds, wrote the logic that prevents this model from killing itself, the way Jonathan claimed it died. So now I knew two things. One, the car was not dead, and two, his story was. So I stood up, and I said it loud enough for everybody to hear. This engine wasn't destroyed in an accident. It was sabotaged. And that word hit the crowd hard, because now we're not talking about jokes anymore. We're talking about fraud, and fraud means prison, and Jonathan tried to laugh it off. But you could hear it in his voice. The laugh didn't land this time, and he goes, "You can't prove that it's your word against mine." And you could feel what he was really saying, like, be honest. Whose word do you think matters more in this parking lot? The rich white dealership owner or the old black man in work boots? And I said, "Actually, it's not just my word." And I pulled out my phone and I called Marinello and I put it on speaker so everybody could hear. The current director of engineering picked up, and the first thing out of his mouth was basically, "That's impossible. That engine can't fail the way the report said it failed, not unless somebody forced it to fail for a payout." And then he said something else that made Jonathan actually stumble. He said, "Henry, are you recording this? You need to send this to legal immediately. This is criminal insurance fraud." And the whole lot went quiet. No more giggling. No more cute comments. Phones were still up, but now they were pointed at Jonathan, not me. I asked him real simple, "How much did insurance pay you for declaring this car a total loss?" And his face went white because earlier he had bragged on camera about getting millions for a, quote, irreparable Ferrari. And now that same irreparable Ferrari was about to clear its throat. I went back under the hood, made 3 corrections that any honest mechanic who wasn't pretending would have made, reconnected. What needed to talk to what told Rebecca to turn the key, and that engine that 5 professionals had called dead roared back to life like the sound of justice itself, clean, strong, perfect, and people actually screamed. I'm not kidding. Some of the same people who were laughing at me were yelling, "Oh my God, he did it." And Jonathan just stood there frozen, because in that moment he understood that he hadn't just tried to humiliate an old man, he had just publicly admitted to a federal crime in front of witnesses and a live audience. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in an FBI office in Los Angeles, not as a suspect, not as a problem, but as the guy who handed them the whole thread. And they laid it out for me, case files, documents, photos of cars, and they said, "Mr. Johnson, your analysis didn't just expose one bad claim. It opened up a pattern. We found at least 17 luxury vehicles sabotaged the exact same way over the last 5 years. Same company, same style of damage, same payout structure." And I'm sitting there thinking, I came in to pick up my granddaughter from work, and it turned into a federal fraud case. You can't make that up. Jonathan ended up arrested. Obstruction, attempted bribery, insurance, fraud, the whole list. They froze assets, seized the dealership, and here's the part that makes me proud. In a way I can't even explain, the new ownership came in, and they promoted Rebecca, my granddaughter, the girl he never even respected enough to learn her last name, to general manager, first time in that place's history. That someone like her was running it, and the red Ferrari that he used like a prop, that same car is now sitting on display in the front showroom with a plaque telling the real story, not his version. The video of what happened that day blew up online, 15 million views and counting. And all these retired engineers from Ferrari, from Mercedes, from BMW, older guys and women who gave their lives to the craft, and then got treated like they were disposable. Once their hair went gray, they started sharing their own stories of being talked down to by people who couldn't build a lawnmower, you know what I mean? And that part touched me more than the views, because this thing stopped being about me and started being something bigger, like a reminder that experience still matters in a world that thinks money equals intelligence. And I'll tell you what really told me we were changing something: that salesman Ryan, the one who joked about getting me a job at his dad's bike shop. He showed up later and apologized face to face, not for the cameras, for real, shaking, telling me he couldn't sleep after watching himself back talk like that. And I told him, we've all judged somebody too fast. The difference is what you do once you realize you're wrong. And now that same kid is helping me teach neighborhood teenagers about cars, work ethic, respect, and how not to sell your soul just to impress a boss. So yeah, Jonathan lost his money, his cars, his status, his freedom. And I won't lie to you, part of me does think that's fair, because some people only learn when everything finally hits the wall. But another part of me, the part that has lived long enough to see men fall and get back up different, that part wonders if somebody like him can come out of this better than he went in. And that's where I want to leave you. Because this isn't just a car story. It's a respect story. It's a power story. It's a who do you assume is worth listening to when they open their mouth story. So tell me in the comments, do you call what happened justice or revenge? Do you think a man like Jonathan deserves a second chance after what he did? And have you ever watched somebody get judged by how they look, their age, their skin, their clothes, and then flip the whole room the way that Ferrari flipped that day? I want to hear where you're watching from and what you've seen with your own eyes. And if you believe dignity still matters in this world, stay with us for the next story.